Hello, my name is Thomas Treen. I'm an escalation engineer working in the EMEA support team. Today I will be talking about the Microsoft Dynamics AX 2012 R3 in-place upgrade. In today's session I will be covering two distinct areas. The first is the AX 2012 R3 in-place upgrade process. The second is covering some potential issues and troubleshooting you may encounter. At the end of this session, you should be able to have an overall understanding of the in-place upgrade process and also perform some basic troubleshooting. So, the first section, the in-place upgrade overview. First of all, I just want to cover what's new within AX 2012 R3, and some of this also covers the AX 2012 R2 product. The first thing which we've changed within AX 2012 R3 and R2 over the RTM release is that we've now separated the model store into a separate SQL Server database. We've also introduced a new concept of data partitioning. Data partitions provide a logical separation of data in Microsoft Dynamics database. Effectively, this allows you to have separate companies or separate entities within the AX database, and these cannot see each other. You must specifically log into a specific partition to see the companies within that partition. There is one data partition required by default, and additional data partitions can be created during the in-place upgrade process. Please do not get confused, this is not a SQL database file partitioning. And finally, we've made some changes to the database schema and flattened the database schema. Why do we call this an in-place upgrade? This is because the actual database is upgraded in place. This is unlike an upgrade from AX4 2009 to 2012 in that in the process here we actually create a new database for the business data and we bulk copy the data over. Within the R3 and R2 in-place upgrade process, we're actually upgrading on top of itself. This is an important distinction between the other process in that once you've started the upgrade process, you are actually affecting the business data within there, and the only way to roll back would be to use a backup of the database you created before you started. Before you begin, the first thing you need to do is make sure you removed all earlier upgrade models from all layers of the production environment. This is because we are replacing the upgrade models with newer models which are used for the in-place upgrade. Having the existing models there will cause some problems. The next step is to make a copy of your production database for a test environment. All bad jobs must have the status withhold or ended. There should be no jobs in waiting. Please remove any customizations in the core system classes, application, global, info, and session. Finally, you need to remove any data migration framework models you may have installed, and you need to fully synchronize the database after removing the models. Once you've done this, the next step is to duplicate the production environment for testing. After duplicating the production environment, you will end up with a separate environment which we will call the test system. I'm going to quickly cover here the steps in the in-place upgrade. Some of these steps will be covered in more detail in the following slides. The first step in the upgrade is actually to run the setup CD or download on the test environment to split the database. This will create the separate model store. The next step is to install the AOS. After you've installed the AOS, you need to then run the setup for a third time and install the client, debugger, and management utilities. After this, if you are running AX 2012 R3, you need to run the following compile command: axbuild xpp compile all. If you're using AX 2012 R2, then you run x32.exe minus startup command is equal kernel compile all. After you've completed this on the test environment, you copy both the business data and the model store database to make a development environment. You run through the code upgrade process, removing all the layers above the code upgrade layer you want to upgrade, and you repeat this process until you've run the code upgrade for each layer. Once you've completed the full code upgrades for each layer, you then need to export the full model store from the development environment. Please note it's important that you run the axutil.exe set /install mode before you do this export. Finally, you import the full model store from development into the test environment and perform the data upgrade. So let's have a look graphically at the R3 setup process on the test system. As you can see on my screen at the moment, we currently have the business data and the models within the same database. This is because we've got a direct copy of the production system in our test system. You can also see that all the layer files within the model stores are what we call legacy or custom. So when I say legacy here, I'm meaning RTM version of the databases. We run the CD and we create the model store split. The database is split and we end up with a separate business data database. And if you look here at the model store, the standard Microsoft layers are now at R3 level. So sys, GLS, FPK and SLN. You will also note here that the standard custom layers are still at the RTM release. Then finally we install the AOS, and the third step is to install the components, the client management utilities. Once you've created the test system, the next step is to create the dev system. So in order to do this, we want to duplicate the test system. Again, just back up at the two databases, the model store and the business data, restore these and create yourself a development system. At this stage, the development system will be an exact duplicate of the test system. The next step is to import any ISV-provided models into your dev system. You may not have an ISV model, and in that case you can ignore these steps. If you do, you need to make sure that the ISV has a version for R3 available to you before you can continue the upgrade. It's important when you import the ISV model that you do it in a particular way to preserve the legacy object IDs. You can see the steps on the screen on how to do this, and this is detailed within the upgrade guide on TechNet. The next step of the upgrade is to upgrade the var layer. You may not have a var layer, in which case you would upgrade the cus layer or the USR layer, depending on which layer you have next. In this example, we're going to go through the var layer. Using the client configuration tool, you set the var layer to be your development environment. Using AXUtil, you also remove the cus and USR layer. So you can see in the diagram here, we have a system which does no longer have the USR and cus layers. This allows us to upgrade the var layer. You start the AX client and then step through the code upgrade steps and follow the checklist. Once you've completed the code upgrade for the var layer, you then export the var layer to a model file. Now, the next step we need to do, we actually will then import the test model store again directly on top of the development environment. So this will actually, in theory, overwrite the var layer you've just upgraded. So you can see here we have our current development system with the var layer upgraded. We're going to then restore the full model store which we exported from test, and we end up to back where we were just before we actually even started the ISV and var layer. Then we use our ISV module and var layer, which we exported in the previous slide, to import back into the model store for development. So you can see on step number 3 here, we have the standard Microsoft models at R3 level, the var and ISV at the R3 level. And we still have the USR and cus at the legacy level. So the next step would again to be to change the client configuration to go to the cus layer, remove the USR layer, and repeat the process again, doing the code upgrade for the cus layer. You repeat that, and then you go through and do the final code upgrade again for the USR layer. At the end of the code upgrade for each layer, you will end up with what we see on the left here in the development environment, where all the layers in the model store are now at the R3 level. Before we export the full model store, it's important that you run the AXUtil/install mode before you export. You export the full model store and import that into the test system. And the reason why we actually have the test system and the development system is because we have to remove these layers in the development system. This will trigger synchronizations, which means that business data tables could potentially get lost. So this is the reason why we don't do the code upgrade directly in the test system. Once the test system has been updated with the full model store from development, you can then begin with the data upgrade within the test system. So then you log into the test system and begin the data upgrade, following the data upgrade checklist. Once you've completed the testing and you're happy that you're ready to go live, you can complete the production cutover steps. So as you can see here, we have our current production system. All the users would have been removed off the system or taken off the system. And then we run the R3 CD or download again in order to split the database. When we run the setup for the production system, we actually use a full export of the development or test system for the upgrade itself to create the new model store. This is because you may have had to make some additional customizations or fixes as part of your testing process. During the setup, you get prompted for where you have exported the full model store. So again, the database is split. We have the business data separately, and we also have the new model store, which is containing all the upgraded R3 models. It's worth to note here that the old model store tables still remain in the business data, but these are no longer used. Again, the next step is to run the AOS setup, and finally we install the final remaining components. Also, you would have to upgrade things such as reporting services and analysis services as well, but that would come after the data upgrade. In the production environment, we perform no code upgrade. We go straight to the data upgrade checklist. Again, following the same steps and procedures as you did with the test environment. So that covers the first section on the overview. The next section, we're going to go through some potential issues and troubleshooting. So the first issue here is actually something which was reported only for R2, but I've put it in here for reference. Sometimes you get an error. An item with the same key has already been added. This was fixed in the KB you can see on the screen here, and was also blogged on this link below. This should no longer be an issue for R3. During the database setup, you get prompted for a temp folder of where the model store is exported to. Sometimes we've had reports where the user does not get prompted for this. If this does occur for you, then you may need to run a manual model store split. In order to do that, we need to find out which standard models need replacing. We need to create an empty database, and then we use AOS to manually create the database schema and export and import the R3 models. So, the first step, if you need to do a manual database split. First of all, we create an empty database, the same name as the business data database to be upgraded, but with suffixed with the underscore model. Then we run the following commands. The first command here creates a new database schema with all the empty tables and store procedures which are required for the model store. The second AOS command here on the screen actually just updates the existing model store so that the existing model store and the new model store database are the same level. So when I say the existing model store, I mean the tables which are sitting in the business data database which we export with the current code and your customizations in. The third step is then we export the full model store, and then finally we import the full model store back into the new model store database. The next step is to identify which of the standard Microsoft model we need to replace. Now, depending on your installation, these numbers do vary, so this is why you need to run this script here within SQL Server to identify that. Once you've run that SQL script, the final step is then to import the R3 models from the download or CD into the new model store database, and then you can use the command here on the screen and you replace the red numbers I've highlighted there, so in this case 17, 19, 21 and 22, with the numbers you've got from the script on the previous slide. Another problem you may have, and this is only again regarding R2, is that the tier 2 language labels were not imported. Now again, this was fixed. However, if you do have a problem, one of the workarounds was to remove the tier 2 languages before running the upgrade, or apply the hotfix before running the upgrade. This will actually update the AOS command in order to fix the problem. This was also blogged on the link below. The following issue we've actually had reported quite a lot of times, and this is relating to customizations that customers or partners may have implemented within their AX system. When you install the AOS for the first time, what happens is it will actually synchronize around 80 approximately 80 tables with the new fields partition. Now these are required in order for the AOS to start and allow you to run the upgrade tasks. What we have found sometimes is that due to customizations, this process is not completing properly and not all these tables are getting synchronized. In order to check for this, you can run the following command here within SQL Management Studio. After running the select statement here, you should have around 80 records returned. If you have considerably less than this, then please contact Microsoft support for further assistance. Once the tables are upgraded, the AOS will actually update a record within the SQL System Variables table, and we set the systab version in the field palm to equal value 119. In AX22 RTM, this version was 109. One possible cause for this is where there's customization in the system and some of the customized tables have the system table property set to yes. It's always worth checking as well within the Windows event log that you see this message that the new systems tables have been upgraded to 119. If after running the previous SQL statement and you found that you had much less than 80 tables with the partition field missing, then one thing you can try is to try and reset this value back to 109. You can do that by running the following SQL statement and restarting the AOS server. If after running this you find you still have considerably less than 80 tables with the word partition in, please contact support and we will assist you with this problem. Another side effect of the AOS not synchronizing the 80 or so core system tables is that the store procedures may not be created during the AOS setup. So during the setup process itself, we actually, after synchronizing these tables, we then continue with the setup and actually update a number of store procedures within the database. Obviously, if the synchronization didn't work, then the partition fields are missing. It can cause these store procedures to not get created because they are now referencing the new partition field. The store procedures in question here are get num internal, sp_add bi analysis server, sp_add report server, sp get next rec id. You can see this in the dynamic setup log, and I have an example on the screen here. Look for things like invalid column name partition, error occurred when executing store procedure. The workaround for this is that you could script these from another working R3 solution you may have, or you could contact Microsoft support who will be able to provide you with these. Other synchronization problems. Occasionally we've had reported where during the synchronization, the data types for particular fields within the database are different to the data type that's what's actually created in the database table. In order to verify this, you can run the following SQL script. If you have no results returned, then your database is completely in synchronization with the SQL dictionary table. Another issue which we see quite frequently is where a model store has been imported into the development environment or test environment, and this model store was created outside or from a different baseline system. In this case, what can happen is that the object IDs for the tables and the fields do not correspond with the tables and the fields within the SQL dictionary table. In order to verify this, you can run the following two SQL scripts. The first script at the top here checks the tables in the SQL dictionary against the table IDs within the model store. The second script will then also verify the fields within the AOT and the SQL dictionary against the model store. When you run these two scripts, you should have no results returned. Or sometimes you can have results returned, but sometimes, for example, the field name has changed. So typically during the upgrade process, we return or we've renamed some fields, for example, Dell underscore. So if you have a field called tax credits and then afterwards you see it as Dell underscore tax credits, then this would be an acceptable result returned. However, if you see a completely different name for the table or a field, then you may have some problems where the AXIDs have got out of sync with SQL Dictionary. If you find you have this problem, then you can contact Microsoft support and we will provide assistance to look at where the problem has come from and try and resolve this issue for you. Some other synchronization problems you may encounter during the setup. If you find you're getting logistic location errors one of the things you could try is to disable the logistics location privacy security within the AOT. In the upgrade guide, we recommend you uninstall the AOS services before installing the new R3 services. If you forget to do this, what you may find is that the maximum buffer size in the registry remains the same, and this is too small for R3 and R2. You need to increase this to at least 26. However, for AX2012 R3, this needs to be 48. As I mentioned at the start of the presentation, one of the changes within AX2012 R3 and R2 is that we flattened the database. In order for the AOS server to understand whether the database is flattened or not, we actually have a record within a database table, and also we have a stored procedure. If this record in the database table, which is sys global configuration in the field name, and the value in that field name is table per type mode, is there, and also we have this stored procedure called table per type in inheritance mode, is in the database, then the AOS is assuming that the database is not flattened. Once you've run the flattening script, the record within this table is removed, and also the store procedure is also removed. So if you're finding you are having problems, that it appears that the AOS is thinking that the database is not flattened or maybe already flattened, you want to check for this store procedure and also for this record within the table is existing or not. So before you've run the data upgrade checklist, these two objects should be there. After you run the flattening script, they should be removed. Another thing as well, which you need to be aware of within R3 and R2 with the partitioning, is that sometimes maybe during the data upgrade checklist you find that no batch jobs are running or they seem to be hanging. However, when you look in the batch job form, you don't actually see any particular jobs or everything looks okay. This is because with data partitioning you only see the upgrade jobs which are in the partition you're logged into. So one thing you might want to try and do is actually look at the batch job and batch table within SQL Server. Another thing you can try and do as well is run the script I have below in order to reset these and then restart the data upgrade checklist again. And finally, some upgrade tips. I always recommend you actually make a backup of the database after each step if possible. Better still, if you're using a virtual machine technology, make snapshots or checkpoints after each various stage. This allows you to quickly roll back to a point in time in order to run a process again if you need to. Finally, if you find the AX client won't start, you can run the ax32.exe/development to try and go directly into the developer workspace. So, quickly recapping what we've talked about. After watching this presentation, you should be able to have an understanding of the overview of the in-place upgrade process and also be able to do some basic troubleshooting on the upgrade itself. Finally, I would always recommend you check TechNet for the latest upgrade notes and also try and do a test upgrade yourself. So download the R3 software from partner source and run through a test upgrade to make yourself familiar with the process. Thank you for your time today.